Welcome back to Dump It. This week we're going to be doing part two of where we left off with Hannah's story about her experience in the Mormon church. And so last time we talked about how she joined the Mormon church and her experience when she went on her mission. And we left off talking about her coming home early from her mission, and then she was surrounded by anxiety when she would enter the church or go into any like church event. So I just want to pick up from where we left off. So you tell me about how you felt when you got home. Like, is this when you started to kind of lose your faith, or were you still believing very much so you just had anxiety about the church?
I was definitely still very believing. And actually, as I got home, like my first goal was to get back out into the field. I really wanted to go and finish my mission. But I really didn't know if that was going to be a possibility or not based on the current state of my mental health at that time. I just remember feeling like I was adrift in a just churning sea. I had no idea which way was up, which way was down, what was happening, and what people expected from me. And I didn't know if people thought that I should go back out or not. I was really putting a lot of stock into what other people thought of me at this time. And it was about the new year. I came home at the end of November. And so, first week of December, I was making New Year's resolutions. And I said, I either want to go back out or I want to get married. And this is kind of where the story changes a little bit. And if you know me now, obviously I did not end up serving the rest of my mission. I got married instead. So I reconnected with Zach, my husband, at this time. And
He slid into your DMs.
yeah, it was pretty smooth. Not really.
Well, you have to backtrack to when he went on his mission and when you went on your mission. I guess we kind of need to preface this with some history because this wasn't the first time you had talked to Zach, or he wasn't a new person. So
No.
you knew Zach in high school, even before high school, probably middle
We met
school.
in middle school, yeah.
And you guys went to a couple dances. You had a crush on him for a long
We
time.
have a little bit of one-sided history for sure.
One-sided. Well, I mean,
I was obsessed with him for 8 years, and he was like, "I'm scared of girls. Girls don't like me. What?" And
you're like
meanwhile, I'm
me.
like giving him teddy bears for Valentine's Day, leaving stuff at the office for him, having him, getting called to the front, and I'm like, "Hey, did you get my stuff?" And he's like, "You're such a nice friend."
You're like, I'm in love
I'm
with
just
you.
like,
I wrote your name on a star and put it on my ceiling.
"I did on a glow in the dark star." And I mean, that's been my guiding star to this day.
You really manifested your
I
marriage.
did. I manifested it into existence.
So so where did he go on his mission?
Guatemala.
So he speaks Spanish.
Well, very well.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
very surprising every time we're together.
Because he's the white blonde, blue-eyed
You would never
Spanish
expect it.
speaker.
Well, yesterday we were hanging out and I was reading something in Spanish and I was like, why does this ground beef say like this word? And he was like, that literally just means ground beef in Spanish. I was like, oh, so it's just ground beef.
You're not buying strange
Strange
meats
meat.
like giraffe meat
I
or
know. I was
anything.
like, what is this foreign meat? And he's like, it's literally ground beef. Um, so you loved Zach for a long time. You guys were close. You went to multiple like school dances together.
Mhm.
And then he went on his mission and you emailed him one?
Just one time to say happy birthday. And as I was emailing him, I was like, I probably shouldn't be doing this because I don't have a chance with him. And I ended up deleting all of the missionaries from my grade. I deleted all of their emails and got off of their email lists if I could because I just was like, I don't have a chance with any of these guys. And he was just in that giant group of guys that I was like, nah,
Not gonna waste my time.
no, these are not the ones.
So then you went on his mission and did he email you?
So he emailed me one time as well, but he had actually sent it to the wrong email. He sent it to just my plebeian email, and I obviously didn't get it. I had no access to that on my mission. And so when he slid into the DMs, he was like, "Hey, I don't know if you got my email." And I was like, "What?" So I went back into my giant archive of emails that had amassed over the 4 months I was gone, and lo and behold, there's one from him like, "Hey, hope you're doing well." And I was like, "Oh, this would have meant a lot to me if I had gotten that out there."
In the
But
midst of my panic.
just wasn't using your brain. Didn't look for the myldsmail.net at the end of the email. So,
So he reached out to you when you got back
yeah.
and he said, what up, girl?
Mhm.
You want to get married?
Not quite. He asked me to go out for Thai food and we really vibed. We connected well. I missed him because he had been my friend. Like, we had gone to dances together, we'd talked frequently, and even though he was afraid of girls, I considered myself one of his girl friends.
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, it's just nice to have this friendship back. I didn't think it would continue after high school because we kind of were going in different directions. But then we ended up going in the same direction with both of us going on missions. I just thought that I would be kind of inactive forever until that point, but obviously I went and did
You did it.
more.
Yeah.
I did the thing. And we had a really good date. I didn't know if it was going to go anywhere because he did talk about a few other girls he had been seeing. And I was like,
Word.
okay, way
I would
to
have been
way
mad.
to brag about your
I would have been like, "We're
prowess.
on a date."
Yeah.
Stop talking about the dates you
And
went
then
on.
just to add insult to injury, I left my Thai food leftovers in his car.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, there he goes, driving away with my pineapple fried rice. See ya. But a couple days after that, he reached back out and said, hey, I'm up from UVU. I'm in like the Heber Midway area, and I'd love to take you out to go get hot chocolate. And I'm like, oh, okay. So this is a second date in a couple of days. I'm like, this is going somewhere. So we went to Neater's and got hot chocolate, which is like the most Mormon date ever
yes.
for December. And he asked me about my conversion story and a little bit more about my faith and where I was at. And my faith was still extremely strong at this point. And so I told him about all of my beliefs. I told him how my mission had gone. I told him how I joined the church. And we'd never had that conversation before for whatever reason. Maybe I was too intimidated by him or just.
Because he's very, like, good, I guess would
No,
be the
he's like
term.
the purest person that I've ever met in my life.
If you think of, like, what would be looked at as, like, the perfect LDS boy, man, that would be
It's a
him.
picture of Zach. It is. And so I don't know why I never shared that with him. I just maybe thought that my testimony couldn't compare to his, but he was very impressed. He loved hearing about it. He felt really connected to it. And from then on, we just kind of started seeing each other more and more. He introduced me to his family really quickly. I'd already met them. We went on a date in high school, but I was reintroduced because it had been such a long time. And I met his grandparents,
Is that
and
when you kind of knew he was taking it
yes,
seriously? You were like, "Oh, I'm meeting your
it was
grandparents."
literally within 3 weeks. I'm like, "Oh, I here's the extendeds. Hello."
He's got plans.
And I was kind of still wanting to go back out on my mission even though I was dating him, and then I was also wanting to wait for some of the hot guys from my mission to come home because I knew they would be coming home
Oh
soon.
my
And
gosh.
so I was like, "I can't date you seriously because I just need to keep my options open." But he was like, "Cool. I want to date you seriously, and I'm going to take you to the grandparents, and I'm going to butter you up, and we're going to do this." And I was like, "But the other guys," and he was like, "No, there are no other guys. Shh."
It's just for me and you.
And so, I mean, he always jokes that he like coerced me and forced me into
Oh my
dating him,
gosh.
but I'm like, buddy, I was a willing participant. Like, I did like him for
I
sure.
pined for you for
No,
8
literally.
years.
I'm like, just think about it for a second, buddy. But we eventually did define it, and he ended up proposing on Valentine's Day.
So did he is that, like, when you decided, "Okay, I'm not gonna go back?"
Yes, and that surprised like a lot of people in my life as well as people like that I was emailing from my mission, like my past companions and like people from my districts and stuff. They were like, "Oh, we kind of thought we'd see you again, but here's your engagement pictures in my
Surprise!
inbox." And
"Hey, guys, I know I told you I was coming back, but I'm getting married."
yeah, and it went, I mean, it went fast. I mean, that's the way you do things when you are young and you want to be together and be
Well, it's
in the
kinda like
church.
Mormon culture.
It is. You
Like,
just
you
get
get
married
married
fast.
fast.
The timeline is sped up. And
But you guys knew each other for a really, really long
yeah,
time.
so I didn't feel uncomfortable with that. If it had been someone brand new, then I definitely would have had more reservations. But I was like, no, this was my. I mean, his name is still on. No, it's not. It's not still on the
They
ceiling. My
moved.
parents moved.
Oh, that was sad to hear.
Wow. Well, I still have the star, and it was on the ceiling until I peeled it off for my parents to take listing photos.
Oh,
So, but anyway, he had always been there in the back of my mind, like maybe this will be, my fairy tale kind of ending because that's what I desperately wanted him to be. Everything ended up working out the way it was supposed to. But yeah, at the time I remember my parents kind of maybe expressing a little bit of concern, like, "Oh, you're
this
just
is quick.
young and this is fast." But I mean, they loved Zach. Zach asked my dad's permission. He readily gave it. My sister was just so happy that I was happy. and I thought that we were going to, go to the temple, get married,
He
and
proposed so cute too. You didn't even talk about how adorable his proposal was. It was perfectly curated just for you.
well, that is true.
Like, we got to talk about how sweet it was because
So,
it is a perfect proposal.
yeah. In February, it's both Valentine's Day and my birthday, and so I knew it would probably be one of those 2 days. And I had sent him a picture of a ring that I wanted and said, "Here is this ring I like, and here's my ring size if you ever need this information." And he was like, "Noted." And then I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna rent a dress and get my nails done for both my birthday and Valentine's Day."
It's going to be one of
And
the
I'm
two.
like, "We're just gonna 50-50 it, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I still look and feel good on that day." And so on Valentine's Day, I rented this dress and it was beautiful. It was red and lacy. And he invited me to come to his family's house for dinner. And he came to pick me up. And he didn't have his phone, which I was like, that's kind of suspicious. We are young people. We always have our phones. And when we got there, there were like rose petals all set up into the garage. There's an above the garage room at his family's house. And so we walked up there with all these rose petals, and there had been like this beautiful table set up with flowers and like white tablecloth and like a fake fireplace on the TV. And his little brothers were coming up and acting like waiters for us. And they had all my favorite foods. And
It was just all done up. Like, every
yes.
part of his family was involved and they
Mm-hmm.
were all so excited. It was so sweet.
And then I discovered his phone was recording us, and I was like, oh, this is important. I know
Oh,
that this is an important moment. He's not just doing this for kicks and giggles. And so then we danced together, and
I
it was,
bet he was so nervous.
he was shaking like a leaf. And I forgot to mention that when we were in high school, we went to prom together, junior prom, and at our school, promenade is a thing that you do as a junior. And so you have to go early in the morning for a couple of weeks and learn like a choreographed dance, a slow dance, and then you're going to perform it on your prom night for like your parents, anyone else's, families that wanted to come see,
Does
people in the
anywhere else do
community.
that?
I think I heard that like South Summit, like Camas area also does this. It's kind of like
A
kind
weird.
of archaic a
Yeah,
little
it's a
bit. It's
little
a little
weird.
dated, like because they literally like present you, and it's kind of like a pageant.
It
It feels
reminds me of like
strange.
the debutantes, how they get like
Yes.
announced or like what is it called?
No, yeah.
Have you seen The Summer I Turned Pretty?
No, but I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
they do a debutante ball. It's very similar to like being
Yeah.
presented and you have the flowers and you do the weird little
Yes.
dance. So anyway,
I don't
you
know.
danced
We
too.
danced to All About Us by He Is We, and so he played that song as he was proposing. We slow danced again. Of course, we did not remember the dance. It had been years, but he proposed at the end of the dance, and so I was
So
like,
sweet.
"Yay!"
Then you sent me pics and I said, "What?"
Yeah, she was just. I mean, if you listen to the last episode, or
I lived in a little rock in the ocean.
yeah,
I was
she
not
was
present.
out of the loop. She was living in her own trauma time.
But I was sent photos and I was
Yes,
excited,
yes.
but I was very surprised.
And I mean, I had only put him on my Instagram like, I don't know, a week before. And so I was like, here's my boyfriend from a week ago, and now we're engaged. So
Surprise!
no one really saw what happened behind the scenes. No one really, I mean, if they scrolled back on my Instagram far enough, they would see that we had gone to prom together
Dances
and
and
then
stuff.
another, girls' choice dance together. And they would have seen him, comment on my stuff. But I mean, no one probably did that. If you did, props to you for doing your
Weird.
research. Yeah, also
So strange.
concerned. But
You care a lot. But I do that to everybody, just
Like,
saying.
yeah, honestly, we are not.
I can't judge
I'm the
anyone.
pot. I'm calling the kettle black here. But yeah, I thought that I was setting myself up for the perfect Mormon life. I was marrying the perfect Mormon boy. We would get married in the temple. We would,
It was like picture perfect. You were going to
yeah,
be
be
the happy
mission
family.
presidents eventually. He would be the literal prophet because I thought that he was just so spiritual and incredible. And I put him on a huge pedestal. And
You were just ready to get into that
yes,
lifestyle.
I
Have
was
the
fully
babies, be
ready.
the wife,
Yes,
go
yep,
to church,
all of the above.
bake some bread.
Bake some. I do bake bread now. That's not just a church thing. That's just a I got a sourdough starter thing. But yeah, that's what I thought my future would be, and pretty soon, things kind of started unraveling for that.
So this was kind of like a big shift for you because the impending marriage.
Yes, and it was really kind of traumatic as I was planning things because I knew that my family was not going to be able to be a part of it. So if you are not familiar in the LDS religion, to be able to attend or enter the temple, you have to have a temple recommend as well as be a member. So you're not just a regular member, you have to have passed a worthiness interview with your bishop, and he asks you certain questions that determine if you are eligible to enter the temple or not.
How does he determine?
I mean,
What does he
I can barely
ask?
remember the questions, but it'd be like, do you have faith in Jesus Christ? Do you have faith that Joseph Smith was a prophet? Are you fully caught up on paying your tithing?
Oh,
Like, do you have any like past due
it's like a
like
subscription.
alimony kind of things that you aren't
Have you
paying?
paid your tithing? You can't enter the temple this month.
And then it's just, I think it was like, do you believe in anything like contrary to the teachings of the church? And I mean, I was able to answer all these honestly and say, no, I don't believe in anything contrary. Like,
You're
yes,
very faithful, very
yes, I
strong in
believe
your
in Joseph Smith.
religion.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I was good to go, but I mean, my family,
Well,
not
they
as
weren't even
not,
LDS.
no, as non-members, they were not going to be able to be allowed to enter the temple. And that's actually where like the marriage takes place. And so they were not going to see their oldest and, first daughter get married.
And
And
there was no way they could.
no, there was no way they could be in there. You can't record it. There's no photographer that can go in there. It's extremely sacred.
And they make it so like you can't have a ceremony after like so basically your parents, because they weren't LDS, would have no part in the most important piece of your day.
Yes. And like, I know that there are a lot of brides that now go around this by having a ring ceremony, but I had read something from the church's website that literally said you cannot have in your ring ceremony anything that is reminiscent of a wedding ceremony.
Because
Like,
it needs to be
the
the
focus
sacred.
needs to be on the temple and all of the sacred and important things that happen in the temple. Do not try to take away from the sacredness of the temple. And I
Even
don't know
though
if I could
everybody does.
I know. I don't know if I could even find that again. I don't know if anyone like even knows that that was a thing that was out there because I found it and I said, "Oh shit." Like
You probably didn't say that.
I said, "Oh diddly
Oh,
wankers."
Lordy. Oh, golly gee.
Oh gee willikers. I cannot do this. But I was devastated to learn that because I was like, "Okay, I can at least have a ring ceremony where my dad can like walk me down the aisle and it can be,
I can have
just
a
as close
procession. I can have
to
a
a wedding
little
as I
vow
can be."
exchange.
Yes, but literally whatever thing that I found, it was church approved and it said you can't do this. And all you can do is have somebody just talk about how important what just happened in the temple was, and then maybe you can exchange your rings.
Ugh.
And I was like,
And that's heartbreaking because, like, obviously you want your parents to be
of
there.
course, like after,
And I don't think this was mentioned. Hannah is very close with her family. Like, they're a
yeah,
very tight knit family. It's not like, somebody who's not super close with their parents and they're like, oh, dang, my parents can't be in there. It's like, these are the closest people to me. Like,
mm-hmm,
her and her sister are best friends.
mm-hmm,
She talks to her parents every single day. It's like, that is what a family is. So, not having them there for her wedding, it was like the
just
worst thing you could
just
imagine.
traumatizing. And at the time, I think they have since changed this, but if you chose to only get civilly married and not sealed in the temple, you would have to wait a year in order to then be sealed. So if you were only going to have a civil wedding, then you'd have to wait a whole year, and who knows what would happen to you during that year. Like one of you could literally die
And then you're not
and then you're
sealed.
not sealed together after a year. And that fear kept me from doing the civil ceremony because so much of the church and its teachings are actually fear based. And I'm, not able to, I wasn't able to realize that at the time. It took me until, a couple years after that to start deconstructing.
I saw a TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who the creator was. I'd have to go back and find it. But I just saw it today and I thought it was so relevant to this situation you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about because it was like this woman who had been a very traditional Mormon housewife. And she was like, I grew up Mormon, but I didn't know what other choices I had because I was so afraid of the other choices. So it's
Yeah.
like, imagine you have 10 candy bars and
I
the church
saw
says,
this.
this candy bar, you can choose any candy bar, but this candy bar, the one is the best one and it will give you eternal life and happiness and it's so good. The rest of the candy bars are poison. Which one do you want to do? Do you know what
Yep.
I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So it's the same kind of deal. Like
They
you
give you,
you have a
they quote, give you a
choice,
choice, end quote. Yeah.
but
But
your
they make
choice is
it,
if you or your husband die, you won't be sealed eternally.
yeah, you will not have your eternal family. Like, and they make such a big deal out of that if you do get civilly married. Like, I don't know if it's
It's
like
just
this
looked down
anymore, but
upon.
yeah, it's like, oh, that means you must have had sex and slipped up and you couldn't have gotten
Yep,
sealed
and
in the
you're not
temple.
pure and
Yes. And so But I was like, oh, I didn't want that stigma. I didn't want to doom my eternal family before it had even started.
Doom.
Yes, I mean, it's doom and gloom. You don't want to imagine a perfectly healthy 21-year-old dying,
Yeah.
right after they get married. But just the fear had me changing all of my plans and not including my family. And I was so horrible at this time, I bet. And I just feel so sad for my
And it's like two
parents.
parts of you fighting against, it's like
Oh,
you
yeah.
fighting against yourself.
Oh,
Because
completely.
you want your parents there, but also it's like, what if something happens and I don't have like this eternal marriage?
Yes. And like they teach all of the time how important your eternal family is. And that
Well,
was
it's like
all
the
I
whole
cared
thing.
about.
Families are forever. That's the
Exactly.
whole
No, that's
motto.
if you had to just like narrow all of the church's beliefs down into a motto, it's families are forever. And I just believe that teaching so fully that I was willing to do whatever it took, even if that meant making my parents pay for a wedding that they couldn't actually, be
Attend.
a part of the biggest part of. Um, yeah, I was willing to do whatever it took. And so we did get married in the
Well,
temple.
and something that also is a huge piece of this, his whole entire family could be there.
Oh yeah, like in
So he
our
wasn't
ceiling
missing
room,
anyone.
he was not lacking for people. Like he was asking me as we were preparing, like, which size of the ceiling rooms should we get? Because one of them has, this many people, one of them has this many. And I was like, I don't have anybody that's coming that I'm aware of. I did have, I think, 4 people that came, and that is not, a
They weren't
normal
like
number.
close,
No, so it's my aunt who I've met like twice. It was the parents of the girl who,
baptized you.
yeah, first got me involved in the church. And then it was one of my mission companions who had returned home just
So
in
it
time
wasn't
for the
like
wedding.
your sister, your parents,
No,
your closest best
it's not the people
friends.
that I was expecting to see as I'm making, a holy vow of matrimony to my husband.
Yeah.
It's just, I was just grasping at straws for people, and there
And that's
they
the
were.
only
Those are
ones
the
who
only
could
ones
come.
that could come for me.
Do you have to pay to get married in the temple?
Nope,
Oh,
it's free.
I didn't know that.
It just costs you your soul.
It just costs you
It just
everything
costs you 10%
else.
of your money, your
Oh
tithing, because you have
gosh.
to be a full tithe payer. So it costs you just 10% of your income for life, and a lot
That's
of
a lot
trauma.
of
Yeah,
money.
it
I
is.
don't even put 10% of my income into my retirement
I was
savings.
not a full tithe payer, let's just say that. That did not work for
That
me.
does not work. I'd be like, hey, I gotta take a little dip into this tithing money.
Yeah. And we can't get
Yeah,
into
yeah,
that.
yeah. We won't, we won't, we won't, we won't.
But
Dang, that's why their temples are so beautiful. They got
exactly.
so much
They
money.
are funded by yours truly.
So you guys get married in the temple, and then you guys had your ring ceremony that was
Yep.
nothing like a
Ring
ceremony.
ceremony that was literally my father-in-law, who is a former bishop, just talking about how important the temple is. My parents just sitting there listening as respectfully as they can, knowing full well that they are not influenced by this and will never be
And
members of the
don't
church.
agree at
Yep.
all.
And then I took my ring off my finger and gave it to him, even though it was already on my finger. And I think we said like one or two little teeny things. Like I remember saying something like, I feel anxious almost every minute of my life, but right now in this moment, as I'm getting married to you, I know that this is the right choice and I don't feel any anxiety whatsoever.
Well, and he's always been like your calming presence
Oh, completely.
because you've struggled with anxiety forever. And
Yeah.
I remember because I came to visit and I was supposed to see you, but then you had a panic attack. And this is the only time me and Zach have ever communicated on Facebook. I messaged him and I was like, hey, I'm waiting for Hannah. Where is she at? And he was like, she had a panic attack. I'm laying on her floor right now and calming her down. And I was like, oh, thanks, buddy.
He just showed me those messages the other day. I didn't know that you were going to surprise me, and I would not have been such an anxious butthole if I had known. But yeah, he would literally, I would have panic attacks almost every night as we were dating and engaged, and he would just lay on my floor until I fell asleep, and then he would go home.
Well, and after your mission, your anxiety was like
Oh, just through the roof.
crazy.
I thought it was just completely incurable, and I was just destined to live that way forever, like just trapped in my own mind and at war with my own mind and afraid of my own shadow,
Yeah.
basically.
And obviously, the conflict with anxiety of your planning your wedding doesn't help. And
Oh no.
so then you have your wedding, you have your reception, and you have a very fun time. There was a lot of people there
No, yeah, I had a great wedding day. Like honestly,
without me.
it wasn't because you weren't there.
I had a great day, and I'm so glad you weren't there. I didn't go to either of my best friends' weddings because of my traumatic marriage when I was a child. So
I'm just waiting to return the favor.
if you don't come to my wedding, I'm gonna be so mad at
Joking.
you.
I'm joking.
Please don't. Watch you and Kylie both don't
We're
come to
just
my
like,
wedding. After the ceremony was said and done, did you have a fun time and like you were
yeah.
happy?
I was able to relax. I was like, okay, I mean, the important part is over with, and everybody has set up everything according to my liking. I can just party, but I'm not a big party person. So I was like, I can just stand in this, waiting line for everybody to say hey to me. I can
Eat some
receive
Chick-fil-A.
them. I can receive them and talk to them. And that's my party. That's my idea of a party.
Your mom had her little
My
flask at
mom
your
had a
dry wedding.
flask, yes, and she was passing that around to some of my friends.
Oh my gosh.
But then, we do our exit, we start driving to our hotel, and I'm like, oh, I actually have to like do something now. Like,
Oh.
so
Because you were very strict with your religion and your beliefs. Like, so you guys had abstained from everything. And
yes.
you both had never done anything with like anyone.
No, we were both like extremely pure. And just like the
Innocent.
funny thing about the church is like it doesn't really prepare you for your wedding night or even really doesn't prepare you for your wedding in the temple either, but that's a whole different beast. But they're kind of just like, abstain, abstain, abstain.
Well, it's very,
Man and
very
wife
like,
between the
do
bonds of
not
marriage.
have sex before marriage. Do not, do not, do not, do not.
And then suddenly it's like, oh, go to town. We need them babies in your eternal family. And then you're like,
Pump
what?
them out 30 right now.
It's literally just like, what? It's like, yeah, drop and give me 30 babies. So it's just,
But we're not going to tell you how.
no,
Figure it out.
literally. And so I was like, I mean, I'd seen porn. I'd seen some movies. I knew how it happened.
I don't really feel like that's a good thing to base it off of, though,
No,
because
it's
that gets
not.
your expectations
I was
wild.
yeah, I was thinking we'd have to do like a whole pizza boy kind of role play or something. Like
Expectations were strange.
expectations were, yeah.
You have to say where you spent your wedding night.
Okay, so we go to the Anniversary Inn. She is losing it over here.
Because I am picturing it in my head every time
I'll show
I've
you a
heard about it.
picture. I'll show you a picture. So at the Anniversary Inn in Salt Lake, we were staying in the Rio Grande room, which is the train car room.
Like, it just makes me think that it's like choo choo, like let's be the conductor.
No, yeah, we put on our hats and we yanked his train whistle.
No, and it's just like making me imagine that like there's like railroad tracks and like
It's tasteful. It's the inside of a
know, like-
luxurious, like early 1900s type rail car. Excuse you.
it to me in my head I'm just thinking of the most silly little train bed.
Stop your mutterings.
Like the inside of Dairy Queen?
Yeah.
That's what I'm imagining.
Oh my gosh, no! It was like dimly lit and it was like red velvety.
Oh, so it was like a 60.
Yes! And he was like, we should take a shower together. And I immediately burst into tears. I said, what? We haven't been able to see each other naked for the entire time we've been dating. And now you want to shower with me? Like,
That's what you
this
do
is
when you're married.
not it. This is not what I want.
You're like,
Can we go back to
"Wedding.
the reception? Like,
Thank you."
someone take me home. But yeah, we did it in a train room. It was really hard. I actually struggled a lot from, I realized at this point, good girl syndrome, which I kind of wrote down a definition, and it basically just like encompasses all these negative or unproductive thoughts, as well as like beliefs and attitudes about sex, and that inhibits your ability to be responsive to it
Like,
or
physically.
enjoy it. Yeah, physically and mentally. Like, so I was struggling from that severely. I had no idea, but like when the floodgates were open and I could do whatever I wanted to my husband, I was like, I'm a good girl. I can't do this.
Yeah, you couldn't just like turn it off.
No, you cannot turn it off. And I actually struggled with a condition called vaginismus.
Which like probably stemmed from
No, I completely stemmed from this good girl syndrome. And this is kind of not like, it's never taught like explicitly in the church to be like, hey, have weird beliefs about sex. It gets instilled in certain people. It just comes from the culture.
Yeah.
And so vaginismus made it impossible for me to have sex. It is just where your vagina and your vaginal muscles, they contract involuntarily and they tighten. So it's basically like just trying to, poke through a brick wall.
Well, and like no matter if you are in the mood or like as much
Mhm.
foreplay as humanly
Oh,
possible, it
yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah, 2 buckets of lube, no,
But
nothing mattered.
obviously at the time you didn't know that you had this because you had
No.
never had sex before.
Yeah, so I was like,
So you
"Oh,
thought
this is
something
just
was
impossible. Something is wrong with
and sex
me."
is bad.
Yes, exactly. So we had a terrible sex life for a long time until I went and mentioned it to my primary care doctor, and she referred me to a physical therapist.
She's like, "Yeah, girl, that's not normal
Yeah,
actually."
and I was like, "Wait, what? What? I've been doing this for months where I can't do anything
Well, and I
and
remember
crying all the time."
you talking to me about it and I was like, "I don't really
You're like, "That
think
sounds like a you problem." It was.
I did not say that." But I just remember being kind of confused.
Yeah, because I mean, you had been sexually active.
Well, I was a very girl.
All of my friends are sexually active and they were enjoying it immensely. And I was like, where is my piece of this good fun pie?
Yeah.
I don't
You're
get
like,
to
the
eat my pie.
description you have given me is not what I'm experiencing. And then it probably made Zach feel like he was doing something wrong too.
Oh yeah. It was a vicious cycle where we're both like, something's wrong with me. No, something's wrong with you. Something's wrong with us.
Yeah.
And
And it's not a great way to start off your
no,
marriage
it's
because
not.
that's supposed to be like the best part of it.
I know. I was like, so if this is all I have to look forward to, then what is the rest of my life
Yeah.
supposed to be
What
like?
is this now?
So the physical therapist, she just put a glove on, lubed herself up, and just medically fingered me.
I remember you calling me after and
Mhm.
you were like, "What is happening?"
And she's small talking the whole time. She's like, "Hey, girl, how's the weather in Heber?" And
I
I'm
think
like, "Please get out of me."
I think you called me and you were like, "My doctor has prescribed for this woman to
Yes.
finger me and
Yes.
put these weird
Dilators.
dilators up me, and then they gave me them to take with me
Yeah.
home."
And so I would just, have to set aside some time. Like, honey, I'm gonna go do the dilators now. You make dinner. I'll be back.
It's like taking your evening pills,
Yeah.
but it's like and this is actually how they medically treat it.
No,
So
it
it's
is.
like a legitimate it's not, I don't know.
It's fun to laugh about now. It
But
was
it was
traumatizing at the time.
horrible at the time.
But yeah, eventually we were able to, I mean,
Obviously.
consummate.
Obviously, you have done
We
it.
have a daughter.
You have a
We
child.
did something right.
It eventually worked the way it was supposed to.
Yes. So that was a big factor that went into kind of my doubts about the church. Just like, oh, I wasn't prepared to be a wife. I wasn't prepared to have sex. I'm just like, okay, what else am I not prepared to do? And the answer is a whole lot. We actually got a calling in church not too long after, and
What is a calling?
it's everything in church. Like if all the teachers, they're volunteers, and so it's
What?
volunteer. It's basically so you're not volunteering, you're voluntold
And
to
you don't
do
get
something.
paid?
No, you don't get paid. So you're going to be called as like a teacher. You're going to be called as a bishop. So they will pick people based on the spirit and prayer.
Who picks the bishop?
Good question.
Like, who
I don't,
picks the prophet? God.
God picks
But
the
like,
prophet.
okay, this is a question. This is off topic. How does so like does the prophet just say God chose me? Like how do they determine that God actually chose this
I'm
person?
pretty sure there's like seniority that has to go into it.
So since you've been such a good Mormon, God talks to you
Well, there are the
because you're
the
so
the
old.
the quorum of the 12 apostles. I think that the oldest, not oldest, but the most senior who had the most experience being in the quorum of the 12 is usually the one that's called as prophet, and then the other members of the 12 will sustain him, or I guess they would put it to another vote if they didn't think he was worth it.
So is the prophet like the president of the church, or
Yeah,
is the prophet like is he an actual prophet who talks to God, or do they
both.
just say that?
Both.
Like I don't understand. I just don't get it.
It's okay. It's
Hurt my
okay.
brain, hurt my brain.
Prophet, president, seer, revelator, everything speaks to God, mouthpiece for God, holds all the priesthood keys on the earth.
What is priesthood key? Okay, I
It's
don't know.
okay.
There's too
Watch
many
Mormon stories
too
if you
many
need to know about priesthood
too
keys.
many things. Too many things. My brain hurts.
This is about me, not
Okay,
the prophet.
okay, okay. We're getting too much into the lore.
But we got a calling teaching children, and I can't remember which age. I think they were probably 5 to 6 year olds. And since I didn't grow up in the church, I don't even know like the names because I know some classes are called like sunbeams. I don't even remember which you know grouping of children we were called to teach. But
Well, and that must kind of be weird because you didn't grow up with the
no,
songs and with the teachings, like you didn't know
no,
it.
I'd never gone to a primary lesson before, And so I was like, I am way in over my head. And Zach was like, this is the best calling ever because they're so silly and they're so cute. And I was like, I can't go. But
Zach is very good with children, though.
no, Zach has always been good with children. He is one of 8, and he was just so important in his little siblings' lives growing up. Like, he was just destined to be around
He's
children.
just pleasant.
He is.
He's positive.
He radiates
Yeah.
light.
And then you were like, no, 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 no,
And
no,
I'm
no.
like, I can't go to this church. I can't teach these children because what do I believe? I'm not sure.
How can I teach them when I'm having all of these war within myself?
So, I mean, anxiety.
Hello, kids. Read the CES letter.
I'm like, yes, I'll print out a nice little printout for you with the bullet points. Take it home to mom and dad. No, but you're not allowed to, as far as I understand, you're not allowed to be a teacher, like just you if you're teaching kids. Like, you need a teaching
Yeah,
partner.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And so this made it really hard for Zach because during this time my anxiety was so bad. I thought that I could be around these children, but I really could not because I'm like, these children know more than me.
And you still had the anxiety
Yes.
going to church.
Yes. So I was like, if I can get in the door, there's no guarantee that I can even stay for this lesson. So we would try to prepare, but he would kind of have it in the back of his mind like, Hannah's not going to be able to make it through this. And I never really did. I mean, I think maybe I had 2 lessons that I didn't think were a giant failure, but I was quickly realizing that I didn't really feel at home in a church setting anymore. It was completely different from Tennessee. And so I kind of just stopped going. The anxiety just got too bad. The depression that came along with it got too bad. I just didn't want to spend my entire Sunday in hysterics
You
anymore.
tried hard.
Oh, I tried
like you
so
would
hard.
drive to church every Sunday.
Oh, I would put a full face of makeup on. I'd put my church dress on. I would get to the door of the church and be opening it, and then everything would just come crashing down.
Well, and like you were trying so hard to be a perfect LDS wife. You were trying to figure out how to overcome your doubts. Like I remember you actively being like going to church every week, couldn't get out of the car. I
Yep.
remember you, begging like, how can I overcome this fear I'm experiencing?
Yeah. And like I would be asking people on Instagram like pretty constantly. And I don't know if there's anyone that remembers this, if even anyone I know was listening to this, but I would post pretty frequently like, I haven't been able to study the scriptures. What helps you study the scriptures? What helps you be a good, student of the Lord? Because I cannot touch the scriptures. Like, they're covered in dust on my shelf. I have a panic attack just thinking about them. I don't understand what I'm reading. And people were so helpful and so kind. They're like, I'm in the same boat half the time or most of the time. And they'd be like, I just, know that the Lord appreciates my effort. And so, kind of those little bits of wisdom, just like the Lord appreciates the teeniest amounts of faith that you're able to come to the table with, like that sustained me. That was enough for a while. Um, but I mean, it got to a point where it was just like, I don't know if I should be doing this because it
It's causing you so much pain
just
and
pain and
anxiety.
yeah, turmoil. And there was always this one girl who, when I posted these things, she would without fail just say, maybe you should not be a part of this church. Maybe this church is not for you.
But wasn't she part of the church?
She was. I think she might have left at this point, but as far as I had known, she was a member. And so I was like, what are you talking about? This is heresy.
She's just like, leave, leave.
And I was like, I can't leave. This is my life. Like, what
And, like,
you're
this
telling
is-
me to leave what I love and believe. I mean, yeah, it sucks really bad,
Yeah.
but I love it. I believe it, even though it sucks, like.
Even though I have so many doubts.
And so I was like,
But it
how
was like
dare you voice what my brain is actually trying to tell me to
Yes.
do,
Well, because your religion was the foundation of your life.
Yeah.
Like it was the base of your marriage. It was like it was your whole community. It encompassed everything.
Yeah.
So it's like,
You're not going to leave that voluntarily.
yeah.
Yeah.
Without a lot of pain. So you are having these doubts, you're begging for help. I remember you posting in like those like Mormon wife Facebook groups, like, what do I do?
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yep.
You're asking Instagram, you're trying to go to church every week, you're doing the best that you could.
Mm-hmm.
So then when did that change? Like from you actively trying?
I got a job. And that was the beginning of the end because the owner of this store, it was a dress rental store and it's still active.
Like a
in
wedding dress
Provo.
store.
Wedding dress rentals. She was in the midst of a full-blown faith crisis at this time. And she had another employee who was like kind of in the same boat as I was, just questioning, not really sure how to navigate being in the church.
Just having doubts, but
Yeah.
not like
But she wanted
leaving.
to stay desperately, and I wanted to stay too. I was like, this is my life, and I'm not going to lose my eternal family over this. I'm not going to lose my husband over this. I'm not going to be one of those weak people that loses their faith. That's not me. And so she and I would talk often and commiserate and try to support each other. And then the boss would come in and be like, "Oh, let me tell you what I learned today about the church." And we'd be like, "La la 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 la, don't
Like
talk."
plugging your ears.
Yep, just sticking my head in the sand. And then one day it was just me and the boss alone, and she was like, "Honestly, I really think that you should read this." And I was like, well, if it's a CES letter, I've already read that and I'm already struggling with that. And she's like, no, it's something different. It's called Letter for My Wife. And the way that it's written is not so much educational as the CES letter is, but it's like a man's perspective telling his wife the things that he has found and how it has hurt him and ruined his life, and that
Oh.
he just desperately wants her to see the light and the truth that he has found. And he's like, I know, like, dear wife, that this will hurt you. I haven't read it in a long time, not since this in 2020. Um, but I just remember reading that, and every single thing that had been on my shelf just became too heavy for it to bear, and it cracked and it cracked and it just shattered. And I was just instantly aware that my life had changed, but I wasn't sure to what extent or what degree. I just knew that I could never go back to the church after I had read the things that I had.
And did you tell your husband?
Um, at the beginning, I kind of eased into it. I was like, hey, I've really been looking at some stuff and I've read some things that don't sit right with me, and I'm not sure how to proceed. I really I want to ask you about some of them. I don't know if this is going to shake your faith. I just need help. I need answers. Like, I was so lost. I can't even begin to describe just how hopeless I felt, feeling like everything that I had sacrificed for and dedicated my life to had been a lie.
Yeah. Well, and like he was such a good Mormon.
Yeah, so like
So telling him that,
having a wife that is looking at this kind of information was probably like his biggest fear,
oh
and
yeah,
was probably like the biggest slap in the face to him. Like, what do you mean? Like, we're an eternal unit. Like, we
yeah,
are supposed to be in this together. We like, if one of
this
us
is our
goes down,
life.
the other one is going to go down, and like that's not what we do. We have to lift each other up. We are going to the celestial kingdom. We're not going, you know, to hell. But
Outer darkness.
yeah, that's not where we go. Like, he's like, we have things that we're supposed to be doing, and stick to the status quo. But
So
I
was he
couldn't
kind of just like,
anymore.
okay, like not
He
really?
didn't want to listen. And at the beginning of this, he was not very supportive. And like, he would never want me to talk about it. It was just sweep
Which then just
everything
kind of
under the rug.
isolates you.
I was completely alone. So as I'm struggling and trying to reconcile all of these doubts with everything that I've read, and trying to see if there's some way that I can navigate the world that I am now living in.
So your husband obviously was struggling with this and he didn't
Yeah.
really want to communicate about, like he didn't want to talk about it.
No.
So when did it cause like problems between you guys? Like, guess that's what I'm most curious about.
No, yeah. Like, we had to go see a marriage counselor, but this was during COVID, and so we did virtual marriage counseling just to try to understand like if we still even had anything in common.
Because that's what
Because
your whole relationship was.
no, yeah, that was such an integral part of our relationship, and something that we still are really happy we did to this day was like values work. So we learned what our true like values are, and if we had any of those in common, and we could just see what the other person valued, and that like the other person was still good no matter what they believed, just aside from their beliefs. And so one of my biggest ones is authenticity, and he was able to see that in order for me to live my life authentically, I had to be a part of something other than the church. I had to separate myself from the church, because it was limiting my ability to live authentically. And one of Zach's biggest values is curiosity. And it was really interesting to see him like wrestle with that, because he wanted to know more about what I was going through, because he was so curious, and just needs to know about everything and get everyone's opinions and just see how other people are living their lives. He will ask people questions all the livelong day, but for some reason he could not ask me anything about this experience. And I mean, of course, he doesn't want to lose his faith. I can't blame him for not wanting to find out more
Yeah,
from where it was
he
coming
didn't wanna
from.
know what broke your shelf because
No.
he didn't want it to do anything to him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a common
And
theme.
that was all he had ever known.
Mhm.
Like, that was his whole life.
So I'm treading into like really dangerous territory at this point. Like, because my therapist I had seen right before this couples therapist, I came to her and I said, I need you to keep me in the LDS church no matter what. I need you to do everything in your power to keep me a member of this church. I will die if I am losing my membership. Like, I will just, if I don't have my faith, I have
I have
nothing.
nothing, yeah.
And then with this guy, I was like, hey, maybe I could live without the church. But yeah, after doing the values work, we were kind of able to stop towing around stuff as much. But I mean,
Did he like, did you still talk about it, or did you just kinda
no,
not?
it was kind of like I'm going through my own stuff in my head. I feel alone every second of the day. If I am like desperate to tell him something, I will, and he'll respond however he's going to respond. But I was like, I don't know if this is going to be a mixed faith marriage or not because he didn't enjoy going to church by himself or doing any of the teaching stuff by himself. He hated having to answer where I was, and he was going to have to be doing that for the rest of his life at that point. And
Like, he had this idea of, like, the family unit in his mind, like,
mhm.
we're gonna have this religious family, and we're gonna have an eternal family, and we're gonna do all
And
this
raise
stuff
your children
together.
in the church, take your children to the church, have them blessed, have them baptized. Yeah.
And so his dreams are kind of changing, and his picture of his life obviously is changing.
Oh, completely. And I mean, I'm the only person that is changing that picture. So I'm
Yeah,
like, he
like,
has to
he didn't do
resent me.
anything.
I'm just like, this is all me. I am the one that is stepping outside of line. I am the one that is destroying this.
Well, and in your head, you're like, "I'm ruining his life."
Exactly. But I mean, at the same time, I'm dealing with my life being ruined.
Yep.
And
So it's like the added weight of,
yet,
I'm ruining my life and the person I love more than anyone else in the world.
yep. And I can't even talk to him about it.
Nope,
Like,
because he doesn't wanna hear about it, and I can't talk to my family because they
'cause they
would not
don't no,
understand.
they're like, "Good for you, sis, you're leaving," and
Literally me.
and then I'm
Like,
like,
"Great."
"No, you don't understand, everything is ruined," and I couldn't really talk to his family either. I remember having one discussion with his parents. We went up to his dad's office and shut the door, and we were like, "Hey, Hannah's really struggling with the church, and she doesn't think she believes in it," and there were just so many things that I could have, told my in-laws about why I didn't believe, and I just, like, barely scratched the surface, and my father-in-law was, like, shutting it down
Well, and it's
immediately.
so hard to articulate, like,
Oh,
"These
yeah.
are my doubts,"
Yeah.
especially to people so religious,
Oh my
and
gosh,
so
yeah.
good, and so
I mean, it's their life too.
holy.
They raised Zach to have the church as his life. It's completely their life. They practice what they preach. They live exactly what the church tells you to do. And they were like,
And they
"Oh,
love
what?
it.
What are you
Like,
talking about?" Oh, yeah.
they can't fathom
No.
why you would think a different way.
No. So his dad was like, "Yeah, let's shut that down." And he, at the very end, I remember he said something along the lines of, "Okay, well, whatever you believe, just both of you figure out your belief in God and go from there. Like, if you guys have the same belief in God, get on the same page with that, and everything will be fine if you can just go from there." And at that point, I was like, "Okay, I can do that. That sounds doable." The problem with deconstructing is that you actually don't really know when to stop. And so,
You start to pick apart every single facet.
yeah. And it just got down to a point where I was like, I don't think that God is real. I don't think that God exists anymore. And at this time, I was pregnant and I was extremely sick. I was nauseous for like 16 weeks straight. I could only eat potatoes. I didn't ever get the relief of throwing up except for
Well,
one time.
I feel like, because so with my son, I had, hyperemesis, which is where you usually throw up like a ton. I threw up like 20, 30 times a day. I lost 40 pounds in a month. Like, I was super sick and I was throwing up, but a lot of people experience it with nausea because you weren't throwing up a ton, but
No.
you were so nauseous you couldn't eat. or
Yeah.
like function as a human. And so I feel like you must have had the same type
Some
of
kind of,
thing
yeah, variation.
because it was worse than just normal morning sickness.
Yes. And so, I mean, I would just be laying.
And you guys lived at his parents' house.
Yes, we did because I was so sick that I couldn't take care of myself. So I was like in the basement, which they don't have heating or air conditioning at my in-laws' house. And the basement would be like 50 degrees and lower.
That's so cold.
Yeah. And
And
there
you're
was this
pregnant.
teeny little window at the very top of the wall that I could barely see anything out of. And I would just be like rotting away in my bed, just unable to eat anything but potatoes, waiting for my next round of potatoes. Just like pretty much wishing for death, like
Well, and like
24/7.
Zach is gone at work and
Yeah.
you're in, it's his family's house. It's not, somewhere you've lived your whole life and
Yep.
you are kind of isolated from all your friends and family because you're
Yep.
going through something that nobody would get. Like we weren't talking at this time. No, we
Mm-mm.
were, but because you were
No,
pregnant with Cozy,
but they're just
but you weren't telling
I couldn't,
anyone.
no, not the full extent because like where
Because
do you
I,
even start? Like,
yeah.
yeah, I'm pregnant, but like also my life is completely falling
Yeah.
apart.
And so
Like,
like you would tell me you're like, "Oh, my pregnancy is so hard." And I remember we went on a walk and you were like, "I'm so sick. I can't do this." And you were so depressed, but I didn't realize all of the other things happening
mm-hmm.
that were underlying. Like I was like, "Oh, she's just having a rough pregnancy and that's why she's so down.
Yeah.
And it will get better. It will get better." And so I just kept thinking, "Oh, she's going to be fine." But I didn't realize like how low you were.
No, yeah. It was really, really awful. Like just I can't even go down into my husband's basement to this day because I have legitimate like,
Like PTSD.
yeah, like my heart starts beating faster, like I seize up.
You remember
I
that
remember just,
hole.
yes, it was literally a hellhole for me. And like I was so physically uncomfortable, mentally uncomfortable. There was just I have no good memories of being pregnant. I didn't take any like good pictures of myself until the very very end. Like I cannot think about that time. And the funny thing is I still wore my garments this entire time. The
Oh,
entire time
really?
I was pregnant. They had maternity garments
And
and
you weren't even believing in the church.
nope, but I said I have to. I have to for my husband. I have to if I want to stay in this marriage. And so I wore garments the entire time I was pregnant. And then as I was packing my bag to go to the hospital, I looked at Zach and I said, when I take these off to put on my hospital gown, they are not coming back onto my body ever again.
So is that,
Sure.
do you think when he was like, "Oh,
Maybe like she's more serious.
she's really not gonna participate in this anymore."
Yeah, I think that that was kind of a defining moment. I was trying to tell him, like, I don't want to wear nursing garments but like deep down, I'm like, I need to make a statement. I need to be done. And so my daughter was born in July of 2021, and my faith crisis kind of, I felt like was at a mostly stable place.
Because then you start being, your whole life is consumed by motherhood. She
hmm
also had a really rough birth because she was in the NICU. And
Yeah.
so there was so much more going on.
Yeah, but I hadn't really like told anyone where I
No.
was at, just my husband. And so, I mean, when my daughter was flown to the NICU, people were texting me like, "Oh, we're praying for your sweet little one," and I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah, you're like, that does nothing
Like
for
this,
me.
this that makes me feel worse
Yeah.
somehow. Like I know that you mean well, but I'm like, this is the last thing I need to hear.
Yeah. You're like, actually, don't.
Yeah, like I'd rather you just like not.
So you have your daughter and you
hmm
you have been experiencing this really difficult faith crisis, and after you had her you're kind of consumed by motherhood. And did you feel like you were starting to be more comfortable with your decisions after this?
No, completely. I struggled a lot postpartum. I had terrible postpartum depression, and it was so helpful to not have like the stress of the church on me at that
Mhm.
time. People were still so kind, like from the church in the ward that we were in. Like they brought meals and everything for a week, and people would stop by and just be like, "Oh, I want to see your baby." Like um, they don't call them visiting teachers anymore. Ministering sisters. That's what they call them. Um, but yeah, the people that were assigned to kind of check on me, they always wanted to see the baby and make sure I was doing okay. But I mean, it got to a point where I was like, I really am doing okay. And I can tell you this honestly, like they would ask me, we haven't seen you at church in a while. Like, are you doing all right? And I would finally be able to answer truthfully, yeah, I am not going to church and I feel great about it.
And I'm not gonna be
And
coming
yes,
back.
I'm not
It's
coming
not
back
just
is
like
the
a
important
temporary
thing.
thing.
Yeah, it's not like I've had an incurable disease and I've been locked up in my room and I can't see you. No, it's I'm
Yeah.
just not coming
Like,
back.
actually, I'm done. So, did you have your records removed from the
I
church?
did. So I feel like my faith crisis kind of I want to say I don't know if I should say ended or not because
So,
I
you
mean
got through.
I got through the crisis portion
Hmm.
about when my daughter was born in July of 2021.
It wasn't such a battle. Like, you
No.
were comfortable with your
And then
decision.
I kind of turned it from crisis to journey
Hmm.
at that point. And so, I mean, my faith journey that I'm on now is still just like constantly evolving. And it evolved as I was just continuing to go through life and navigate motherhood. And then in January of last year, I removed my records. And
But is your husband still?
he's still on the records of the church. Yeah. He's not attending right now. And I'm not one to,
That's his story.
yeah, put words in his
Yeah.
mouth or share his beliefs. But yeah, I'll just,
But you removed yours.
I have removed my records. My daughter was never blessed. She won't be baptized if I have anything to say about it.
And you don't take her to church.
No, she doesn't know who Jesus is right now. And
She probably would think Jesus is Peppa Pig.
no, she does. I guarantee it.
That is her God.
But like, I don't know. It's hard to say those things because like little me like loved learning about Jesus.
Yeah.
But I just
Well,
don't want to open any doors that I can't shut
yeah.
for her. I want things to 100% be her choice.
And you don't want her to go through like the heartache and trials that you had to go through.
Yes. And like there's no saying that she would. There's no saying that she would ever join the church, but like she might also completely love it and thrive in that environment. I'm just going to wait and leave that up to her
That's
because
her choice.
yeah, because that is the most important thing to me that you know, I reclaimed my ability to choose and now I can give that to her and just knowing that she has, the world at her feet and she can do whatever she wants and I will support it fully. Like that's I don't know.
That's perfect. That's exactly what you should do as a mom.
Yeah, that's
You're
all
not
I can hope
forcing anything
for.
on her and you'll support her no matter what she chooses to do.
Yeah,
So you're happy where you're at now and you're
completely.
still learning, you're still growing, but it wasn't like your life. So your life did not end,
No, I'm
obviously.
still here and I honestly if you had talked to me in 2020, I would have said that I would be dead right now.
This is the end of the world.
Yeah, completely. But like for anybody that is questioning anything about the church or going through some kind of faith crisis, whether that's seen or unseen, just know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, whatever you choose. Your life is not over. Your life will get better.
Hmm.
And the pit that you're in, like there's a ladder hiding in that pit somewhere. You're going to find it and you're going to climb out. Like it may seem like an impossible choice to leave the church, but just the more that I keep living, the more that I'm realizing like I have missed out on so much
There's a
and
life outside of
there
it.
is a life outside of it. Yeah, completely.
When my brother died, I thought I couldn't survive. After my divorce, I thought I couldn't survive. And, when you experienced all of these trials leaving the church, you didn't think you could survive. But now we're here today. We're sitting in my basement. We're having fun. We get to watch our kids grow up and play together. And all of the things that plagued us three,
Mhm.
4 years ago, they,
They're
don't matter.
basically irrelevant.
Hmm.
Like it's funny because like I feel like one of the church's like common like metaphors is kind of being purified and like refined by the refiner's fire. And like I literally was like felt like I was burning alive, but I have come out on the other side of this and I could not be happier with the person that I am and the way that I feel and the things that I believe and just the way that life looks for me now.
And you're happier and more confident than I've ever seen you in 15 years.
Yeah. And like
Like, you are genuinely happy, and I have never seen you so at peace, and I have known you a very long time.
mhm. And that's saying something. I mean, people are going to maybe look at this and say, anyone that still actually is active in the church, like, oh, this is just the only true joy comes from the church. This is just artificial joy and it will go away. I really, I don't think
I feel
so
like your joy when you were in the church was artificial joy
completely.
because you
So
were you were basing your entire life off of.
there's a quote that I really like that I found from one of the Facebook groups that I was always posting for advice in, and this guy was talking to his mission president, and the mission president was like, "But you had such an amazing testimony, like when you were out in the field, you said all the right things. Like why, like what happened?" And this guy said, "I borrowed faith from the future, but the future never repaid."
Oh.
And that's exactly like that could sum up my entire experience with the church. I did everything I could hoping for a better future, but the future did not ever come to pay out. The future was just full of the same doubts and questions.
Yep.
And it got to a point where I just needed to know. And then when I knew that I couldn't be a part of it anymore.
Yep.
And here we are.
Yep. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you know, no matter what you're going through, it's going to get better. And if you were curious about why Hannah was the little perfect Molly Mormon and then very slowly, well, you kind of disappeared completely from social media.
Yeah.
So probably nobody even knew.
Oh, yeah. I still haven't ever fully addressed this. I've never said it anywhere out loud or posted it anywhere. Like, I am not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints anymore. I've never said that. And I mean, it's been alluded to because I'll share like liberal content and like things that are like, you don't have to watch General Conference if it makes you want to kill yourself. Like, I'll share stuff like that, or at least I did when I was more active on my social media. And people would be like, what? And like, I have 16 tattoos now. I mean, people have seen me out on the streets and they're like, hi, those are new.
We had some sips of some alcohol in Nashville.
Just a couple.
Literally like 2 drinks. But I was like, wow, my friend is
Finally
rebellious.
partying with my friend.
No, we literally had like 3 drinks and then we
And then
went back to
did
the
a little
hotel.
dancing, and then we ordered McDonald's and almost threw up.
Yep.
So, I
But
mean, but that's I'd rather have that than, you know,
but you didn't feel
anything else.
guilty about it.
No, no.
And you drink coffee now.
Every day, couple times a day. My teeth show it. I need whitening services.
Well, I'm glad that you are where you are today, and I feel like, I mean, I'm being selfish, but I feel like it made our friendship stronger,
I agree.
and I feel like we can have a genuine relationship now where we're not like tiptoeing around like
Oh yeah.
this big elephant in the room.
Yes. LDSophant.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is wrapping up Hannah's experience and her journey in the LDS church, but I'm definitely going to bring Hannah on many more times because we have so many weird stories that we could talk about because she's literally just been through every single step of my life with me.
That's true.
And I feel like I'm funnier when I'm around her. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll come back with something else less heavy next week. So thanks. Bye.
Thanks.